Hey everybody, so it's time for another episode of NHL Remember Him, and today we're going to talk about Stephen Weiss, who certainly was mostly known for his time with the Florida Panthers. Weiss was a solid forward offensive player for the Panthers, and then at the end of his career, the Red Wings, but he certainly spent most of his time with the Florida Panthers. He was picked fourth overall in the first round of the 2001 entry draft by Florida, and quickly began his NHL career. In the 2001-2002 season, he played 7 games, obviously just a test run there, but then he came for his first full season in 2002 with the Panthers. 77 games played, only 21 points that year, but you got to remember that back then, these Panther teams that he was playing on were not very good. Weiss put together a pretty solid career, but certainly not as great as you would expect from somebody picked so high in the draft. He played 732 career games. He scored 156 goals, 267 assists for 23 points. Then in the playoffs, all those years in the NHL, from 2001 all the way till 2015, he only played 9 playoff games. Made it to the playoffs once with the Panthers, and made it to the playoffs once with the Red Wings, and only played 2 games in that 2015 year with the Red Wings, because he was certainly at the tail end of his career at that point. But only 9 playoff games in 13 or 14 years in the NHL. In those playoff games, he had 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 points. Like I said, he played most of his career with the Florida Panthers from 2001 all the way until 2013. Then he played the final 2 years of his career with the Detroit Red Wings from 2013 to 2015 and was out of the NHL after that. So over 700 career games played, over 400 career points, but just never developed into that star player that you would expect when you take someone that high up in the draft, 4th overall. Florida, I think, had big expectations for Stephen Weiss. They thought he was going to become a star. They thought he was going to become a superstar. And he just never, ever really got there. When you look at, his career numbers, he really started out kind of slow, never had more than 30 points in his first 3 years in the league. And then finally had his first 20-goal season in 2006-2007, where he scored 20 goals and 48 points. But he followed that up with only a 13-goal season in 2007-2008. And then he had his best year. He had his best goal-scoring year was 2009-2010. His best points year was 2008-2009 with 61. He had a pretty good stretch there from 2008 through 2012. His point totals were 61, 60, 49, and 57. He scored 20 goals in 3 out of those 4 years, and his assist numbers were really good all of those years. So he did have a good stretch there, a good 4-year stretch from 2008 through 2012. And then he struggled with injuries, especially towards the end. 2012-2013, he only played 17 games. 2013-14 was his first year with Detroit. He played 26 games and only had 4 points. And then his final season, 2014-15 with the Red Wings, he played 52 games that year and only had 25 points, and that was it. He only played 2 games in the playoffs, and he was out of the NHL. So Stephen Weiss, certainly a guy that I remember. I remember him mostly as a Panther, because pretty much my entire time growing up watching hockey, he was on the Florida Panthers. I obviously remember him with the Red Wings at the end, but that he was a shell of his former self by the time he was ending his career in Detroit. I remember him as a pretty good player, never a great player, never a standout, like he's the superstar of the team kind of guy. And I think when you take someone 4th overall in the draft, that you kind of expect them to become a star of the team type of guy. And Weiss never did that, but he put a very solid NHL career together. Multiple seasons over 50 points. When he didn't get to 50, he was usually in the 40s. He put a very solid, middle of the lineup, second or third line guy career together, and he played a long time. His game total was cut down a little bit because of injury. He certainly could have played more games, but years-wise, he was in the league from 2001 until 2015. So, 14. Well, you had the 1 year loss to lockout. So really, I guess 13 years in the NHL. But pretty solid career. Definitely a guy I remember. I have plenty of fond memories watching him with the Panthers, and yeah, the Panthers usually weren't very good when he was during that time when he was a Panther, but certainly wasn't his fault. And that the Panthers were a franchise that struggled for a long, long time through most of the 2000s. So it's kind of unfortunate that he was stuck on a bad team for most of his career, but he still was a solid player and a pretty fun guy to watch. I think one of the things that really stood out about Stephen Weiss was his skating and his hands, and just he played through before the whole speed and skill thing became the main focus in the NHL. Through the 2000s, that was not that focus yet. So he kind of stood out with his skating ability and how slick his hands were, and he was a fun player to watch. He was very good with the puck, very quick player. And that's certainly something that stood out while I was watching him, and he was a lot of fun to watch. He definitely slowed up towards the end of his career, but through his prime, those years in Florida, he was a very fun guy to watch. So